Hey everybody, Bill Priestley here once again, and I want to talk today about a statistic that may catch you a little off guard, or you may have seen it coming from a million miles away. And that is that the U.S. Department of Labor, a number of years ago, came out with a statistic that said that the average college graduate, in other words, age about 22 or so, the average college graduate, over the course of their working life, from say 22 to 70, was going to have 15 jobs in between those two things, in between those two ages. Now, that's a staggering statistic. But here's what makes it even more staggering. In other words, if you take 70 and you subtract 22, you get 48, right? And if you divide 48 by 15, you get what? You get less than 3.5. Well, here's the thing, folks. That means that the average college graduate is going to spend more time in college than at any job they will ever attempt for the rest of their lives, on average. That's a sobering statistic, and it's a cycle that has gotten worse and worse and worse over the decades. I remember my grandfather, who had 3 jobs over the course of his lifetime. He was born in 1924. His daughter, my mother, had about 10 jobs over the course of her lifetime. I'm 46 years old. I'm on job number 8 right now. And that's right on track for this 15 job thing that I might be able to try and might be a part of at some point in time. I hope I'm not. But I want to try and give you a couple of reasons and a couple of ways to buck this trend, especially if you're the mother or father of a student in high school that is coming out and they're going into the real world, or they're going to college. You've got a college student that is eventually going to be going out into the real world. How do you buck the trend and try to have more consistency in your life and not be in a constant state of looking around and trying to figure out what your next move is going to be as soon as you've walked in the door on your first day of work at the place of work where you work now? So, 2 ways. First way we're going to talk about is the person that's already in mid-career. They've been doing this. They've taken another job every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they're not happy. They're not satisfied. They're not getting out of what they want out of it. And honest to God, the really only true solution to this is for that person to find a dream job, and not so much the fact that they have to find it. It's the fact that they have to undergo a lot to get there. First off, you've got to identify the job. And by identify the job, I mean you have to be passionate about the industry that you want to work in. You really have to have some longevity in terms of, I've been following this industry for a while and I really want to be a part of it. Number 2 is that you have to have an enthusiasm for the work that you're going to be doing. In other words, it would be great, say for instance, you want to be a part of Disney. That's wonderful. But you have to be enthusiastic about the work that's going to be involved that you're going to do for Disney as well. So make sure that you are passionate and enthusiastic about the work there as well. And 2, you have to see this as a long-term relationship. There has to be some longevity here. In other words, when you see a career at Disney, in other words, you see yourself not only there next year, but 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. Whatever that is, whatever it is that you see, you have to have some degree of vision in seeing yourself there for a long period of time. Now, there are a couple of real problems with this in terms of being able to achieve it. One, you have to put in the work in terms of the self-evaluation to figure out really seriously and honestly what it is that you want to do. This is not just some sort of a fly-by-night thing that you kind of go, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. You can't be a flash in the pan. It's got to be something you've got to put some real thought into and some real commitment into as well. And then that's just the cerebral end. The second problem that you're going to run into is the work that is required to get from where you are to where you want to be. In our example, from where you are to Disney, from where you are to Harley Davidson, from where you are to who knows where, whatever that dream job, that dream career is there for you, is you have to put in a whole lot of work in order to get from where you are to where you want to be. Now, that's for the person who is already mid-career and they've been going through the cycle already. The other way to break this trend is to not get involved with it in the first place. And that involves one of the biggest breaks you could possibly get coming out of college or coming out of high school or coming out of trade school or whatever it is. And that is getting a job in the industry in which you want as the first job. And that pays enormous dividends. It's not a make or break situation because you can transfer from one to another. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But the bigger thing is that if you can get a job out of your formal education years into an industry in which you really want to work, you have basically torn down a bunch of fences that you would have had to jump over and burned a lot of hoops you would have had to jump through in order to make this dream a reality, because it's much harder to go crossing industries than it is to start in one and go straight up it. And for that reason, we're going to talk about a concept here that is the reason that's true. And that is the concept of workplace inertia. You may not have heard of this. Workplace inertia is a concept whereby if you are hired on by a company, it is more likely for you to get promoted within that company going up than it is for you to be moving across industries from that position to one at a different company and making a quote-unquote lateral move. And lateral moves are generally not realistic. Say, for instance, you're a college graduate and you take that first job, or you've been trying to get a job in the music industry and it's not working out. And so in order to pay the bills, you get a job in retail. You get a job that just pays the bills. Well, when you get that job, you automatically start accruing experience within that particular industry. And therefore, the industry starts to get to know you a little bit better. And if you apply yourself and work as you would be expected to work within the industry, chances are you will be more likely to be promoted within that industry than it is for you to move in another direction outside of that company. Now, the other problem with this, and again, moving laterally, is not necessarily realistic, because as you accrue knowledge and experience within one industry, you don't have the chance to accrue knowledge and experience in another industry. In other words, moving laterally from one place to another is not realistic. Moving from one place to one place down in another industry is more realistic, because you don't understand perhaps the ins and outs of that particular industry in which you want to work. So that's one of the reasons why moving is such a tough thing to do, because chances are you're going to have to make a lateral move down in order to make this actually happen, instead of making a lateral move straight across. By the way, that theory essentially does not hold true if you get to the highest levels of business. Say, for instance, if you're at the CEO, CFO, COO area, if you are a COO in one industry, you can be a COO in another. At the very highest levels of business, that works. But if you are in mid-level, mid-career, chances are going from one level to the same level of another industry where you would have the same level of expertise, perhaps the same level of supervision, those kinds of things, that's not as realistic necessarily as it is if it happens at the very top end. So that's something that you have to work out for. And workplace inertia, especially for the student that's just starting out, graduating from high school, graduating from trade school, graduating from college, if you can get that first job inside the industry in which you want to work, then you have a much better chance of earning much more consistency in your work life down the road than if you didn't get that first job. So again, both solutions are essentially to identify and find a dream job in which you are intrinsically motivated to do what it is that you want to do in an industry in which you want to work and for a consumer base that you want to work for. Those being the three aspects of what I would call a dream job. Past that, you could very well get stuck up in this trend where every 2, 3, 4 years or so, you're ready to pack your bags and move on. And that can be a tough life, especially once you find yourself with a family, once you find yourself with people you need to support, and once you find yourself with bills that you got to pay or things that you want to do. And now all of a sudden you're working for extrinsic motivation. You're working for the money, the perks, the ability to do things, and you're working for the weekend. And that always causes people to go, what else is out there? Because this stinks. We know that because 75% of Americans either dislike or hate their job. So let's buck the trend. Let's find out what you really want to do. Let's chart a course and let's get there. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, never let your dream die before you do. I'll see you next time.